Well, first of all, I want to say what an absolute honor it is to get to stand with you, to be here with you. It is just incredible. I know that Mary communicated to us how blessed she feels to have so many come. I know the community feels that. Thank you to those of you, obviously, from the community who have come tonight, but thank you to those of you who have driven as much as 4 or 5 hours to be here tonight to support that. So let's give everybody a hand. What I want to do tonight, and Carrie did an excellent job of just going through this incident, and I think it's very clear that you can see that this is an incident that probably could have been resolved in about a 5-minute phone call. That could have just been dealt with, over with, and move on. The reason that it is here, the reason we're here tonight, the reason that CAIR is going to have a meeting here coming up this Sunday is because they care nothing about this incident. Right. They have a much, much larger agenda that is both nationally and globally. They think they hit the jackpot with concrete. They think that you guys are not going to stand up to them. So what we're here to do tonight is to show this group and groups like these that the people of this community, of this state, of this nation will not sit down, be quiet, and allow our freedoms to be eroded. So tonight, our goal is to further explain that actually everything that Mary explained within her statements to this student and to her class are absolutely and utterly factual, as well as explaining to you further the connections that CAIR has to worldwide terrorism. You are not dealing with a civil rights group.
That's right.
That is a front. You are not dealing with a benign group. That is a front. You are dealing with a group that has billions of dollars behind them from elements around this world and in this country that want to bring this nation down and further implement Islamic law throughout the world. And what they like to do with towns like this, and later after I'm done presenting, I will give you a brief example of another town like this back in 1925. It's called the Scopes Trial, that dealt with the same thing. They found themselves on the map dealing with a different issue within the schools, the issue of evolution versus creation, but they were shell-shocked. We're a tiny little community, but the ACLU used that community to be able to create pressure, case law, and ultimately to remove creation out of their schools and bring in evolution. So the magnitude of what is going on here is important. It is important to exonerate Mary. It is important to stand up for the city of concrete. But it is also important for us to make sure that the truth is out about what is happening in our nation. So just briefly, I want to just tell you about my background as well. And again, we are just very honored that we were invited. And thank you to all of those, Rick, yourself, and many others in this community that put this together on such a short notice. We needed to make sure that we were here first, because we want to make sure that if some of you choose to go to the meeting on Sunday, personally, I think it's going to be a big waste of time, but if you choose to go to that meeting on Sunday, you're going to be well informed and well educated with hopefully great questions and evidence so that you can confront them, if necessary, on their lies. Because I promise you, and CAIR has done this, everything that I will present to you here tonight about CAIR, they will not even talk about. When we had this town hall meeting about a year and a half ago that Carrie was talking about addressing CAIR, at that time they had written a letter to all 295 school districts in the state of Washington wanting special privilege for Muslim students that was not afforded to any other student, and they wanted to be able to come in and look at all the curriculum and make sure the teachers were taught cultural sensitivity training and their brand of Islam. We confronted them. We wanted to make sure that we also were confronting what was happening in our textbooks. At that time, in that meeting, I presented evidence against CAIR, and they actually were there and they had a few minutes to talk. Do you think that they questioned or refuted one single thing that I presented? No. At the very end of the meeting, all they said is, we just don't want bullying. Well, there's one thing that I agree with CAIR for. we tell CAIR, stop bullying the city and town of Concrete. Stop bullying this teacher. So just very, very quickly, I was born in Iran, and so I know a little bit about losing freedoms, because I was born in Iran and I witnessed, oppressive radical Islam come into my birth country, take it over, and now it is as Carrie was talking about, it is an Islamic theocracy which has taken the freedoms out of the people there. I came to the States after waiting many, many years legally. I became a U.S. citizen. I had a transformational life change. 14 years ago when I became a Christian. I became a follower of Jesus Christ, and that was a major shift and change in my life, obviously. And when I became a Christian, we were more culturally Muslim, but my family was very upset. My dad disowned me for about 4.5, 5 years, and really it was by the grace of God that turned. But I became an apostate. And what that means under the teachings of Islam is I deserve a death penalty. And so we oftentimes confront CAIR about these issues. We say, CAIR, we asked their director, will you condone the fact? Condemn. I'm sorry, condemn the fact, not condone, thank you. Will you condemn the fact that under Islamic law or under Sharia, I should be killed? They didn't say anything. They stayed silent. Because they have their agenda. We just want to stop bullying. So the fact is that it's very, very important for us to stand up for our freedoms, for the ability for us to have good dialogue, honest dialogue about these issues. And like Harry was saying, there's totally fine to have discussion about different cultures and backgrounds. But what you have to understand is CAIR has no agenda. That's not what they want. They want specialized treatment of Muslims, their brand of Islam, and they're already getting treatment that most other students don't. In fact, I'm here to tell you that they're not being bullied in schools. The access they've been given already to our textbooks and our education system is not being given to any other group. They're already getting extra special treatment. Why have they gotten that extra special treatment? Because they will use these tactics to intimidate, to push, and when we don't stand up to them, we capitulate and they get their way. That is why it is so critical that not only do we exonerate Mary and what is being alleged in this incident, and of course they went from publicly putting out there that these things were alleged to then putting out there as if this was fact. And yet nothing shows that they took even a second of time to come and be able to get the facts, the truth. They don't care about the truth. That's right. So when I became a Christian, I became a pastor. As Rick said, I currently pastor Truth and Love Christian Fellowship in Everett, Washington, and been pastoring now for almost 11 years. The Till Company is my company, and the reason I named it the Truth and Love Project, as Carrie mentioned, is because we are being killed by political correctness in this country. Yes. We must have the courage to speak the truth in love. And we pray, both of us tonight, that you will hear that from our heart. You will hear the truth, but you will hear it in love and with respect. But we can speak the truth, and we must not be silent. Now, I'm a former police officer with the city of Redmond, been a teacher, been a coach. And some of you may even remember last year I actually ran for governor of the state of Washington. But one of the commitments that we made throughout the state is the fact that, again, wherever these things are happening, we must stand up. We must have the courage to stand up. Now, what we don't want to talk about tonight is, again, we don't want to get too sidetracked with talking about Islam. By the way, if the community wants to know more information about the teachings of Islam and that kind of stuff, we'll be more than happy to come back and talk about that. In fact, I brought some copies. I have a DVD called The True Goal of Islam and the Threat of Sharia Law in America. Those are in the back. So you can get that, watch it, get your neighbors together. But tonight, predominantly what we want to do is focus on, again, CAIR, their allegations. So here's some of their allegations that they made when they wrote the Superintendent Hawkins, and they wrote the Justice Department. And the letter that they had written to the superintendent was biased, here's their title, Biased Anti-Muslim Curriculum. Biased, that was the title of their letter. So here's the first thing they said. This is a quote from their letter. Miss Janda is teaching students inaccurate information about Islam and Muslims. Number two, they claim, Ms. Janda is clearly in need of cultural competency training to lessen her fear of people who are different from herself. Then they said to the letter to the Department of Justice. This is the letter they wrote to the Department of Justice about one statement made by one student that could have been resolved in 5 minutes. They said, this incident concerns us not only as a civil rights issue, but also as a violation of public health and safety. By making the bigoted, misinformed comments that she did, Ms. Janda put an entire classroom of students at risk of going to school in an unsafe and degraded learning environment. Wow! Can you say delusional? So we are going to address these concerns, because this teacher deserves the right to have her name cleared.
That's right.
So, as I said, I'm not going to get too much into this about as far as the ideology of Islam, but I do want to cover this one point that you have to understand so we understand CAIR's ultimate goal. Because one of the aspects of Islamism, or a fundamentalist Islam, which is the breed and the organizations that CAIR represents. And we're going to go through their background. We're going to go through the groups that they're connected with. One of their main aspects is that their goal is to spread Islamic law throughout the world.
That's right.
In every community, in every school, in every law. And in countries like ours, when they can't do it through revolution or overthrow, they do it through what's called creeping Sharia, or stealth, where they come in incrementally, step by step by step by step. Push, 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 push. Sue, sue, sue. Threaten to sue, threaten to sue. Intimidate. And then we back away and we give up and they get their way. So right here, the actual goal is this thing, a concept in Islam called ikmatuddin, simply saying that Islam or Sharia is not just religious, but it has political, societal, economic, military, family, civil, criminal. Here's the basic way to understand it. This is what CAIR is referring to when we keep talking about the fact that we want to make sure that we are protecting our Constitution and our foundation as a nation and our laws. Because Sharia law is the constitution.
That's right.
Of Islam, of fundamentalist Muslims, and that's their goal that they want to get around the world. So CAIR's agenda ultimately is the advancement of Sharia. Several years ago, they kept denying this. No, 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 we don't want to see Sharia law, Islamic law in America. Then recently they've changed their tune. Now they're saying, no, Sharia law should be protected as First Amendment right. The problem with that is if Sharia law is implemented, there would be no First Amendment. We got to understand that. Because Sharia law fundamentally does not care about freedom of religion, freedom of conscience, freedom of press, freedom of expression, freedom of assembly. Only if you agree with that aspect of Islam. So this is very, very important, and this actually comes from their holy book, the Quran. And again, I go through much more in the video, but tonight I just want to understand this. That this is not just something that's a radical idea, this is something that is a commandment. So you have to understand this, and I'm sharing this with you as a former Muslim, as somebody who has studied this for years, and talked to many, 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 many former Muslims and people who are scholars. So that's got to be understood, so we understand CAIR's long-term goal. That they are a group that must accomplish a purpose. They are being commissioned by the upper parent group, who is the Muslim Brotherhood, to get this job done in America, and they are one branch of it, and they're the branch that deals with civil rights and lawfare, what's called lawfare, lawsuits, intimidation. There's other groups that are there for political, in our colleges, for our schools, but CAIR predominantly deals with the schools. They have been pushing for special treatment in the jails. 3 years now, 3 years in a row, they have had rallies at the Capitol here in Olympia, Washington, calling it a Muslims' Day on Martin Luther King's birthday. Because they want to make the case to America, they are the new civil rights cause. Does that make sense? So we have to understand their bigger agenda. Because otherwise they look so benign. They look so innocent, and they come across as innocent. And we have to be wise as serpents, innocent as doves, so we understand what's going on. Now, I want to quickly give you an example that if you don't think, Carrie already gave the example of how creeping Sharia is coming into our laws. I want to give you an example where it relates to the schools. Because what is their agenda? Let me read to you what they asked the school district. Here's what they want of the school district. Because of this incident, this statement that they've gone, crying to the entire world, they said, 1, CAIR respectfully requests the Concrete School District to, 1, initiate an investigation into the alleged incident. That was done. No evidence was found. It was over with. 2, ensure that absolutely no retaliation occurs against the father, the student, or any other parents. Now here's the utterly ridiculous thing about that request. You think that we have put the name of this father or this student publicly? No, not one time. Who do you think did it? CAIR did. They put it on their own website. They put the picture of the student on their website. So if they were so concerned about protecting this student, why are they prancing this family and the student around? Understand the agenda. Number 3, they want the school district to provide any and all documents, including but not limited to email correspondence, policies, procedures, memorandums addressing curricula, presentations, or programs on Islam, Muslims, and Arabs. 4, clarify which textbooks and texts are used to instruct students at Concrete Middle School about Islam, Muslims, or Arabs. Clarify, now why would they want the textbooks? They want to make sure that there's approved textbooks, like the one that Carrie was talking about. The textbook that came out of a case very close to here in Lake Stevens School District, that a father whose son was, was it 5 weeks? I think they were 7 weeks, they kept talking about Islam. So dad goes to the school district, wants the textbook, the school district initially wouldn't release the textbook. Dad has to threaten to sue the school district released the textbook. He had written what, 18-page complaint, something like that? 27-page complaint. And we met with him and talked to him, and we looked at the textbook. And that's what Carrie was mentioning about. That there was 3 pages given to Christianity, half a paragraph on Judaism, barely anything on other minor religions, 7 chapters dedicated to Islam, and one of those chapters was their religious pillars, their 5 pillars. First pillar, how to pray to become a Muslim. In the public school textbook, right there, kids are learning how to pray to become a Muslim.
You have to pray to God right now in the Christian school.
That's right. You can't even say God or the Bible in a public school today without being, threatened. If a teacher says something like that, how quickly would they probably get fired?
That's right.
Yeah, that's right.
And yet this is happening. And then what we found out subsequently was that the textbook, which was, by the way, funded by the Saudis, pouring billions of dollars into America, the textbook company allowed that 7 chapters to be written by a guy from down in Sacramento. A professor, a Muslim professor, who wrote those chapters, basically whitewashed the history of Islam, the history of the Crusades, all that stuff, gave completely inaccurate information about some stuff, allowed these religious texts to be in there, and then the textbook company just plopped it in there without any oversight. And so we're identifying those things, but they want the textbook so they can make sure that it meets their standards. Number 5, clarify which diversity trainings or cultural competency trainings Concrete School District staff complete as a requirement of their employment with the Concrete School District. Number 6, clarify the policies and procedures guiding the approval, denial, or change of curricula. Number 7, clarify the religious accommodation policies of Washington State Public Schools to ensure that they are consistent with RCW, blah, blah, blah. And number 8, here's the big one, institute CAIR Washington's diversity training for all employees of the Concrete School District.
In legal terms, because I know this now, that's called unreasonable. Unreasonable.
Paralegal, thank you. You're paralegal. Now, so we know that they're already getting biased treatment in our public schools here in the state of Washington. And we know that around the country, particularly right now, there's online curriculum and the Common Core curriculum that is coming. One of them is called C-Scope, this online thing. Here's what they're doing in Texas.
Yep.
American kids are encouraged to wear Islamic garb, Islamic hijabs, as part of their training. Can you imagine if Christian students were encouraged, or our students were encouraged to, I don't know, wear a cross on their neck to relate better to Christians or Jewish students, but yet we are doing this in our public schools. So what I'm trying to tell you is, they are not the victim, they are getting their way.
That's right.
We are the ones who are capitulating and giving in because we buy the story. We buy that victim mentality because we don't want to feel bad and we don't want to offend. Now, let's talk about CAIR and where they spawn from. The Muslim Brotherhood. How many of you have heard of the Muslim Brotherhood? Anybody here? Okay, very good. Excellent.
It's Obama's political affiliation.
The Muslim Brotherhood. Let me go through this really quick here. Started, and I want to be very, very clear here with the details, because what we're going to do is, again, number one, we're going to expose CAIR, but number two, you're going to see that everything Ms. Janda said was completely factual. And Carrie already addressed that with what the State Department is saying, but we're going to go way back before the State Department, and we're going to show you that everything they're saying is completely factual. Number one, CAIR, Muslim Brotherhood started in 1928 in Egypt. After the fall of the Ottoman Empire, they restarted it. This guy named Hassan al-Banna. Now, al-Banna, this is the statement of the Brotherhoods. This is their creed. This is their worldwide creed. Allah is our objective. The Quran is our law. The Prophet is our leader. Jihad is our way. And death for the sake of Allah is the highest of our aspirations. So martyrdom, as Ms. Janda was talking about, is absolutely the highest aspiration for these groups. Why? Because they believe that they get to go to paradise, have a guarantee of going to paradise if they're martyred. So that's number one. Number two, the Muslim Brotherhood, remember now Ms. Janda was talking about Hitler, correct?
Yep.
The Muslim Brotherhood were best buddies with the Nazis. Hassan al-Banna, which was he basically had a love affair with Hitler, was writing him, commending him all the time. When the Nazis took power in Germany, Hitler supported al-Banna to be able to get the Brotherhood back up and running in Egypt.
Yep.
And this guy, Hajj Amin al-Husseini, who was the Grand Mufti of Jerusalem, this is a picture here. See if I have my little laser pointer. Can you guys see this over here? This picture is this guy, Husseini, meeting with Hitler. And here's this guy. What is he doing? He's inspecting. There was 2 SS troops. In North Africa, they had 2 designated SS troops that the Brotherhood, Muslim Brotherhood, actually were the troops. 2 of the largest groups, and they were called the Hanskar, which was German for basically the sickle. And so this was the connection. Here's Himmler over here, right here in this picture, inspecting these 2 SS troops. So we know factually that the Muslim Brotherhood had direct ties with Nazis.
That's right.
And they had a co-equal hatred for Jews.
That's right.
Factual number one. Number two, when the Brotherhood continued to grow, and they subsequently also worked to assassinate, or tried to assassinate the Prime Minister of Egypt, and later actually assassinated Anwar al-Sadat, a subsequent president. Did I say Prime Minister? The President of Egypt subsequently. Now, the Brotherhood shows up in America in 1962. And so in America, they begin to grow, and they form an allegiance, and unfortunately, our government, including some other governments of the West, helped them to form or support the Mujahideen in Afghanistan. Who are they fighting? The Russians. So they formed that. Now, after they kicked the Russians out, I think it was, what, 89, they kicked the Russians out, the Mujahideen, with the help of these Western powers. These two, the Mujahideen, split. Now remember, who formed the Mujahideen? The Muslim Brotherhood, with the help of the West, unfortunately. But the Brotherhood had a hand in it. They were there. So the Mujahideen split. One branch is the Taliban, and the other branch is Al-Qaeda. And Al-Qaeda is under the leadership of Osama bin Laden. In fact, one of the favorite books... Huh?
Not anymore.
Well, not anymore. One of the favorite readings of the Muslim Brotherhood members is Mein Kampf. They love Mein Kampf. And so, in fact, I want to read this to you really quick. They titled it, the Muslim Brotherhood have titled that My Jihad. That's what they titled Mein Kampf. It's sort of as a pseudo title. So when they branched this off, the Taliban is now a front group for the Muslim Brotherhood. In essence, they're doing their bidding. And as Carrie said, it is who we're now trying to continue to fight in Afghanistan. In 1987, the Muslim Brotherhood formed Hamas. Who was Mary talking about? The Taliban and Hamas. So 1987, Hamas is birthed. How did they come to that position? I want to just read this to you really quick. There's a report, by the way, that I have if anyone to see it. We have two reports that we'll reference tonight. One is called an explanatory memorandum. It is evidence from the Holy Land Foundation trial that I'll talk about. And again, this is all factual. This is not speculative or things we pull out of the air. Another report is called Homegrown Jihad in the U.S. by the Citizens for National Security. They have some great information. I just want to read this to you really quick. In 1981, there is an establishment, when Hamas is formed, they form other groups, the Brotherhood forms Hamas and they form other groups. But Hamas is the Palestinian branch of the Brotherhood. There's a group that is called the IAP. It's called the Islamic Association for Palestine. That group is who helped start, from the Brotherhood, Hamas. Hamas, in their very charter, calls themselves the Palestinian branch of the Brotherhood. Hamas comes and creates the Palestinian Committee, American Muslims for Palestine, and this thing called the Holy Land Foundation. The Holy Land Foundation is a charity. But what we later find out that it was a charity that funneled, by some estimates, at least $12 million back to Hamas out of America. Then Hamas and the Brotherhood, which are really one, form its flagship creation of what group? The Council on American-Islamic Relations. So they create the Holy Land Foundation, they create all these other groups, then they create CAIR. The group that is coming into your town on Sunday is directly connected to Hamas, the Muslim Brotherhood, Al-Qaeda, Taliban. They're all connected. And they're funneling money back to Hamas. They were on wiretap as funneling money, which we'll talk about the trial in a minute. Is this a benign group?
No.
This is serious, folks. This is why we must stand up. This is not about Arabs or Muslims as general. This is about these seditious groups to this nation, to this state, to this community. So now, by the way, if you can't see that picture there, that picture is Hamas. What salute are they doing? They're doing the same salute to Hitler. So you see the connection? So again, when Mary says that groups like Hamas and the Taliban are just like Hitler, it is completely factual, documented evidence for more than 60, or back to the 1940s, over 65 years.
That's right.
This is not conjecture. This is not bigotry. This is not a misinformed teacher. In fact, it's a very well-informed teacher. A rare thing sometimes in our services. Now, CAIR's founder, this is their founder in 1994 when they were founded by the Brotherhood and Hamas. Their founder says Islam isn't in America to be equal to any other faith, but to become dominant. The Quran should be the highest authority in America, and Islam the only accepted religion on the earth.
Coexisting.
Yeah, does that sound like they want to coexist? Do you understand, though, why they have that mindset? Remember, I just taught you a few minutes ago. It's because they believe it's a commandment to institute the Quran, to institute Islamic law as the highest authority in every nation. The problem is, here in America, we have a constitution already.
Amen.
We have a set of principles already, and we're not going to give them up. Now, the Brotherhood also fronts other groups, like the, I'm sorry, let me give one more statement here. This is CAIR's current executive director. I know for some of you in the back it's hard to see. His name is Nihad Awad. He was a supremacist. He's an Islamic supremacist. And he was quoted as saying, who better can lead America than Muslims? I beg to differ with his statement. Now, this is CAIR. Okay, this is who's coming to your community. This is their ties. And in 2008, the FBI actually cut ties with them once they were found to be funneling money to Hamas. So far we're good, right? Now, other groups that were fronted by the Brotherhood were groups like the Muslim Student Associations, the MSA. They're on the college campuses. In fact, they're the oldest organization in America of the Brotherhood. They were the first group that was formed by the Brotherhood because they knew we got to go after young people. And they also focus, along with CAIR, extensively on the prisons. They love to go and be able to recruit from the prisons. Another group that's their political wing. Now remember, CAIR is sort of like their civil rights wing. Another group that's the political wing is this group called ISNA, the Islamic Society of North America. ISNA is the political wing. They are working to implement Sharia in our government and in our laws, which is what CAIR is referring to with the court cases that we've been having. And of course, this is very dangerous because if you get precedent, if you get case law, then other judges will go, oh, well, Judge so-and-so used Islamic law, therefore I can too. The problem is we have this thing that's supposed to be called the Declaration, the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, right? And we have to make sure we stand by those things. Now, these groups that are there, let me explain to you, how do we know so much about these groups? Well, a lot of it you can research, and the history is there, going back to, again, the Brotherhood's founding. But in the Holy Land Foundation trial that I mentioned earlier, the Holy Land Foundation was this front group that was a front as a charity. After 9/11, the home of one of the members of the Brotherhood in Virginia, plus actually they had one raid in Europe and Switzerland, another raid in America. In 2004, this raid was done, and they found all this evidence, basically what's called an explanatory memorandum. A long-term plan by the Brotherhood to infiltrate America and all of our systems. Education, media, government, business, our laws, our churches, on and on and on. One of the things that, by the way, CAIR does a lot of stuff about is they're trying to reach out to churches and have interfaith dialogue with them. And try to tell them that, you know, if you're a Christian, that's the same God as Islam, and that is absolutely wrong. And I can tell you that as a former Muslim. But that's a different issue. Now, real quick. These groups, from that memorandum, all of a sudden, all these groups were exposed. They started finding document after document, which again, if you really want to read it, it's right here, of all these front groups. Dozens and dozens of these front groups that have been produced, but the main ones are the ones that you see on the screen here. And so CAIR was then commissioned by them to be the civil rights wing that would basically push for lawfare, civil rights violations. Anything that we threaten to sue you, we threaten to come in and bring civil cases against you, because they knew that that was one of the ways that they had used it in Europe and other parts of the world to get people to capitulate. And of course, they love to pick on small places.
That's right. But
the thing that they're not calculating is this small place has a huge heart. Right? And you guys have a lot of courage here. So in the Holy Land Foundation trials, 108 members of the Muslim Brotherhood were arrested, charged, put on trial, and convicted, and are in prison.
Hey.
Okay? That was good. It gets worse, unfortunately, after that. In the meantime, this trial starts in 2007 into 2008. We have a change of administration in America. And when a new Attorney General takes over, a gentleman by the name of Mr. Holder, Mr. Holder comes and they begin to squash this case. They begin to say, stop, we're not prosecuting any further. So a bunch of people like CAIR and their leadership are what is referred to as unindicted co-conspirators, meaning that they're conspirators, and there's plenty of evidence, but for whatever reason, the prosecution decided to stop and not go further. We know what the reason was now, because what happened was, not only did the Obama administration and Mr. Holder squash the case, they then sealed the records, by the way, records that they had released to the Muslim defendants themselves. So all the documents were released to the Muslim defendants, but then the state, meaning the government, who wanted to go further could not, because the Justice Department and the White House, in my opinion, once again, exercising unconstitutional actions, decided to say, stop. Now, Congress got involved last year and said, we're going to subpoena those records. We want to see it. A year later, after the request of Congress, the White House and Mr. Holder now have sealed the records and will not release them.
Talk about bullying.
We are lawless.
That's right.
And the question is, why? What else is in those records? What else is going to come out? By the way, the headquarters of the Muslim Brotherhood is in Chicago. Now, for the sake of time, because we want to make sure we take a few questions, let me address to you, go back to those claims that CAIR made. Remember the claims that they made against Ms. Janda? That this teacher is teaching students inaccurate information about Islam? You guys remember that? Yeah. Well, here's the claim that we need to make back to CAIR. CAIR is the one who is teaching students inaccurate information about Islam and Muslims. It is CAIR who is bringing misinformation. These statements were not bigoted. These statements were not misinformed. These statements were utterly and absolutely factual if CAIR even cared 1 ounce about the truth. The fact is that when we travel around and expose CAIR, they never deny any of the factual things that I presented to you. All they do is call us hateful. Islamophobes, because we're trying to educate people on these connections of these groups that want nothing but to bring this nation down.
That's right.
Starting in concrete.
Well, continuing in concrete. Continuing. It's been going on for a while. But they, again, as I said earlier, they think they hit a gold mine here. And we have to make them be... I want the taste in their mouth after Sunday to be so bitter that they will not want to come back to the city of concrete. CAIR said that Ms. Janda is clearly in need of cultural competency training. Well, I'll tell you, CAIR is the one who's in need of some cultural competency training to lessen their fear of people who are different from them. And stop thinking that everybody hates them and everybody is out to get them. In fact, as we showed you tonight, we are bending over backwards, way above what we should be doing to allow extra special treatment of Muslim students that we're not affording to any other students in our public schools or in our country or in the state. Then they said, remember what they said to the state, to the Justice Department about the fact that this is a public safety, a violation of public health and safety by making the bigoted, misinformed comments? Here's my statement. CAIR is the one who's violating Ms. Janda's civil rights.
That's right.
But also, they're the ones who are creating a violation of public health and safety. By them making these bigoted, misinformed statements that they made, they're the ones who are putting not only Ms. Janda at risk, but the city of concrete, the students, and the rest of this community and the state at risk. Because then they create this charged environment. Rather than dealing with somebody in the community by sitting down and having a rational conversation, they want to create a media circus and a charged environment.
And violence.
Well, they potentially could then lead to violence, because then you have, unfortunately, some of those who get upset and may act. That's one of the things that we want to, again, reiterate very much tonight. We can communicate this message in love, because we are standing on solid truth. Amen. We don't have to resort to those things. We don't have to resort to name calling. We just have to stand and not let them keep bullying. So these are the factual statements that we need to make sure we push back. And again, I'll reiterate the Scopes trial. CAIR wants to come into this town, butter you guys up, lead you astray and say, listen, all we want is we just want to make sure that these students are, yeah, you know what, if you cared about that, you should have come, you should have encouraged the father to come, talk to the teacher, talk to the school district, resolve the matter, not gone to the media, not brought a whole circus into this town.
They don't want that.
They don't want that because they want to use this town as a springboard.
That's right.
And we have to be wise about that. So again, what we want to make sure that it's very clear that these are the things that they're trying to do. Their claims are completely outrageous. What can you guys do? What can we do? Well, first and foremost, we have to be able to speak the truth. We got to wake up to these things. The problem is that CAIR shows up and most people don't know about that.
Yep.
And so they look benign, and they look well organized, and they look well dressed, and they look like this big organization that got their act together. Well, of course, that's what they're going to look like. Like Carrie said, are they going to show up here with baseball bats? Are they going to show up screaming and yelling? No, because that doesn't make any sense to their agenda. For now. For now.
That's right.
If you look at what's going on in Europe, the agenda shifts.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden you start seeing more aggressive behavior. They're not there yet. These groups are at a phase right now. They're very calculated and think very long term.
Look at France.
But right now, that's right, look at Europe, look at the European countries. All you got to do, look at the fact that in Great Britain there's over 85 Sharia compliant courts. In France right now there's over 750 enclaves that are referred to as no-go zones because they become Muslim-only enclaves. That's the problem, is we have to understand that we seek to be able to have, a melting pot of a nation, but these groups do not seek that. It is only a front. These groups want nothing but segregation and then domination.
Right.
They segregate, they encourage, and what Carrie said is absolutely right on. They don't represent most Muslims, but that's what they come across as. We represent all the Muslims. And so what they're wanting to do is they really are forcing people in this country, including some Muslims, who are, she said, I'm from Iran. Yeah, from Iran, you get a lot of people, Persians, they're atheists, they're agnostic, they don't even believe in God. Or they don't even want to, they're just trying to be here, live freely. But you have these groups that want to implement and forward and continue to advance the cause of Islam and Sharia, and we have to stand up to it. You guys got to speak the truth in love. Please, 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 please. Let's speak it in love, but let's speak it and don't let your voices be silent. This community has to rise up.
Amen.
And make them be sorry that they ever thought about stepping foot in the city of concrete.
That's right.
Political correctness, as I said, has got to go in the garbage. Yep. Share this with others, folks. My encouragement to you is between now and Sunday, you get on the phone with your neighbors. You get on the phone with your family. You get on the phone with anybody you know and share this information with them. So that if people do choose to go to this meeting on Sunday, they're informed. They're educated. They're going in with full knowledge of what's there.
Tell them how they lie, Shahram.
And tell them how they lie. Yes, I will tell them how they lie. One of the reasons that they are allowed to lie, this is a thing that people don't understand about the ideology. It is actually condoned under Sharia law, something called taqiyya.
Yeah.
Al-taqiyya means that they are permitted to deceive the non-Muslims. So there's nothing for them to lie to us as the American people or as this community and tell you one thing when their agenda is something else. We have to be wise enough to see that. But I hope and I pray tonight that we were able to, one, bring factual information, and you guys have an incredible teacher here in this community. We need to continue to support her. We need to continue to, And what we want to do is, Rick, maybe we'll go 15, 20 minutes for if they have some questions.
Yeah.
But what I ask you is we have a lot of people, so please don't make a statement.
Right.
Please ask your question quickly so we can try to do our best to answer. We need to cut it off out of respect for time, but we will stay around for a little bit and keep at it. But Carrie wants to say one more thing.
Real quick, if you want to learn more about this organization, now the name of the book is Muslim Mafia. That does not mean that all Muslims are in the mafia or in this group, okay? It's just that CAIR was infiltrated and their own documents are in the back. This infiltrator wanted to get information on CAIR, and these documents were supposed to be shredded. Well, he took pictures of them instead. And so it actually links them, and it talks about the players in CAIR, and it's a very good book about CAIR. It's not about Muslims, it's about CAIR. So if you want to get that book or take a look at it, I don't know where you can probably get it on Amazon or something, but if you want to take a look at that, you'll get a lot of information in that book. And consequently, when I talked with Mr. Bukhari of CAIR, who's going to be here, and Jennifer, I said, Mr. Bukhari, do you know what documents are in this book? And you know what he said to me? They're stolen! I said, I don't care if they're stolen or handed down by Allah himself. They exist and they link your organization to Hamas and terrorism. He didn't say a word.
That's right. The reason they can't say a word is they can't refute evidence.
That's right.
They can't refute evidence in the Holy Land Foundation trial that charged, as I said, and convicted 108 members of the Brotherhood, and they can't run away from their history. We know the ties of the Brotherhood, we know the ties to the Nazis, we know the ties that they have to Hamas, to Al-Qaeda, to Taliban. All these are factual. So there is no escaping that. They're going to come on Sunday, and they're not going to even talk about those things. They're going to talk about, we want to make sure the standards in the schools are right, and kids are treated equally, and that we're not bullied, and it's deflection. Don't look at this hand, look over here.